Welcome back. This week we have another guest, a little different than our dad boot camps because Bradley Castillo is already a father.
Whoop.
So we will be talking about his journey. His kid is about the same age as mine, and talking about different living arrangements and moving with a kid. As always, I'm Aaron Covington,
And I'm Tony Rag,
and we are
40 Black and Dad.
all right. So first, I want to clear up a misconception because Brad said this, and a couple other people said this too. Me, Tony, and I are 40 Black and Dad. That's the name of the show. The guest can be anybody can be a guest. You don't have to be a dad even. You don't have to be Black. You don't even have to be 40. We want to explore different areas of fatherhood or whatnot within that. But it's like on Oprah, you don't go to be Oprah. Oprah's the name of the show. She's the host.
She interviews herself every week.
Yeah, as a duo, we are 40 Black and Dad, talking about being 40 and or Black and or dad.
Or anything else we decide that week.
Yeah, I mean, when you first texted me, and I was like, "Oh, great! Oh, sure, yeah, I'm interested. What's the podcast?" And you were like,
Yeah.
40 Black and Dad. I was like, "Well, I have two out of the three. I don't know if you've noticed. The other part is a little bit missing.
66% is good enough.
I mean, it's a great grade. So, but thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. I think this is a really relevant topic in today's day and age because there's so many challenges involved.
So many challenges. And actually,
That's
it was funny because we were talking and catching up, and you were like, I'm about to be a dad. And I was like, I just became a dad. We like forgot, even though Brad was in my short film I shot a couple years ago. So, but you just live in different places and you keep in touch, and then you reach
Well,
back out, and it was just like, wow, this is happening at the same time. So
yeah, and I think we both use our social media for business rather than a traditional. Like a lot of people I know, like their personal lives are all over their social media,
right,
and I
everything
made
going
the
on.
yeah, I made the conscious decision to not put my son on any of my social media. I want to keep my social media just for business and keep my personal life. There's still some stuff like in the older parts of my like Instagram, for instance, like there are certainly like family things involved in there because I was not transitioning to a business page at that time, and I still want people to kind of see a little bit of
Right.
who I am to make a determination of my character and things like that and my interests so that they can make a more informed decision on who I am. But I don't update it anymore with anything really personal.
Yeah,
It's purely acting
as
and voiceover.
as you like expand in the world and meet more people, I just didn't want responses from not from certain people, like specific people, but when certain, not certain, like I know the people, but a message would come from somebody, and it's like, okay, we used to work together, but I don't want you all. It's
Yeah.
almost better if it came from somebody random I didn't know than like this guy or this girl from an old job or from
Yep.
school that I wasn't really close to. Like, don't act like we're tight. We're not tight.
Yeah, that's a thing. And that's why I made that decision because a lot of people, when I would post things like I would do with acting, like if I had booked a job or was on something,
Right.
people would just be like, "Oh my God, it's so great! You're so I know you back when." And I was like, as far as I remember, we didn't get along at
We didn't
all.
get along.
like,
Why
I
aren't we
hated you.
pals?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we actively disliked each other, and now you're trying to be Mr. Nice Guy, and I was like, makes me feel weird. So yeah, I don't want people having access because I think for me personally, family is very intimate. It's very
Mhm.
private for me. And my girl doesn't even have social media, which I love.
Right.
She's just she's a very, very private person. And we both talked about it. It was like, because it was a strange thing because when people started visiting, and visiting the baby, they would take
Right.
pictures. And then all of a sudden he was all over social media. And I was like, oh, well, that I didn't know how to react. It kind of it just took me off guard because they don't think about it at all. It's just natural for them to just take a photo and post it.
Right. And you're like,
Yeah.
you got to clear that. You got to clear that
Yeah.
with a parent, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
But it's too late now, but it's fine. Like there was no malice behind it, but it was
Right.
definitely a moment that I had where I was like, oh, I view these things a little bit differently. Um, I take my responsibilities as a father. I can get a little heightened, with
Yeah,
some
Mhm.
things, you know what I mean? I think
totally.
you both can probably speak to that instinct
Yeah.
that you have that just kind of comes out of nowhere where you get a little protective, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. So it's funny that you bring that up because I'm very similar to that and I kind of more of a private person myself. My wife is the opposite. She actually runs a social media marketing agency. So
Oh,
social media is
nice.
her life. And she had like we have a social media for my son. He's almost 3 now. It's not super active, but it's very we always talk about like, okay, what do we want to post? What can we post? What like we're very, very conscious of like
Hmm.
posting and how we post and what we post. And even lately we've backed off it quite a bit just because like you said, like it's kind of a personal thing. Like for me, like I'm not on social media very much at all. And like I like to enjoy the life and enjoy the moments that we have together versus like, okay, do this for the gram. So it's very much a balance of like like work versus family and like how do you blend the two. So that's something we can talk about for sure later on is like the social media age and how it affects kids and parenting for sure. Because yeah,
Well,
there's a lot of balance.
totally. Because it's so commodified now. Sometimes I feel like, why even do it if you're not getting paid for it? Because it's not a friendly share network anymore, you know?
No.
It's
Hate,
a big
all
corporate
hate.
thing. So
Yeah.
if you want to share pictures, there's other websites and other avenues to do that. And you can just send a text message or a group chat. That's how I feel now. Like if
Mhm.
you're posting something on social media, like just tell me you're getting paid for it. Otherwise, I don't want to know about everybody's life like that, you know?
This is a
Exactly.
collab post. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
And
agree 100%. Like, and
I
I'll send everything out through text messages now instead,
totally
updates and stuff like that.
like
So,
with actors or writers when they post career stuff, it's like, okay, there's actually like a currency involved in that,
yeah,
so people can know what you're working on, and then that can heighten your profile, even if you don't get paid directly, like from Instagram or a company for an ad. It's still like building the same way they have articles in Variety and Deadline. Like those all build a hype
Mhm.
and
right.
boost your name.
Yeah.
If you're not doing that, like I'm not getting any clout really from posting my kid, even though we're doing a dad podcast. But I can post a podcast and talk about it, so I don't need to post the kid.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a lot different in theory than it is like the reality of posting pictures of your child. You know what I mean? Like we can sit
Yeah,
here and talk about the philosophy and the ethics and the morality involved in being a father, but that's
right.
all well and good. But I don't want strangers looking at my son. You know what I mean? Like it
Yeah.
just is what it is. And I'm always going to feel that way. When he gets older, I'm sure it'll be different. But for now, like it's just an intensely private thing. And the longer I spend time with them, the more I feel that way. I'm like, oh, this is an experience I want for myself.
Hmm.
Yeah,
I don't want anybody else along except for my girl. I don't want anybody along for this ride unless it's close family and stuff like that. But like strangers who haven't seen me in years, like they don't get to experience this.
And
speaking
strangers that don't
of,
know you at all
go ahead.
because there's some like you look at like the DMs like I mean it can get real strange and creepy real quick on social media. And yeah, you have to be very careful of what you put out there. And not even just from a creepy standpoint, but from a safety standpoint. Like people can easily find out where you live or where you're at based on what you're posting. And I mean that happens a lot even with celebrities. So you have to be very careful
Sure.
of what the context of how you're posting as well. So yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I do believe that we might revert back to 1999 levels of tech just out of privacy concerns
Yeah.
in the next few years. We'll be like, internet is so dangerous. Just leave me. I have an answering machine. Leave me a message. Fax me your
Get you a
text
Nokia
message.
brick
That's it.
phone.
Yeah,
You get your Nokia brick phone. That's all you
Yeah.
get is this.
That'd be better because nobody could get a hold of you then. You still have
Exactly.
that like plausible deniability of like, oh, I just got home. Let me check my messages.
I checked that at 11 p.m. I missed it. Dang it. But privacy. Speaking of privacy, what I did want to talk about this week is how your living arrangements change when you have a kid.
Oof.
Brad, how old is your son?
He was born in February, so he's like 2.5 months now or so.
Oh,
Congratulations.
even younger than I thought. Wow.
Yeah.
Just a little tyke.
He's like 11 pounds right now.
Yeah.
So I mean he's growing like a weed. He was 6
Mhm.
pounds 11 ounces when he was born. And then they drop their weight for a little
Right.
bit and then they come back up. And so like he's been just going nuts. Like he feeds all the time. I feel so sorry for for my partner. She's just exhausted all the time, you know. Um,
There's
but
no break from feeding.
there's none.
Even we're approaching 5 months and it's still, I mean, it's just all the time. And I'm sure Tony can attest.
Just
Once
so
they
you
get
know,
to solids, it
they
doesn't
eat all the
change.
time. Like they
Yeah.
eat all, like they never stop eating, even after they're 18 years old. Apparently, they just keep going. So,
I mean, I remember when I was a teenager, I used to eat all the time, but this is ridiculous. It's like there was a period where he was cluster feeding every 30 minutes, and
Right.
he would just be going nuts if
that's
he
crazy.
couldn't eat. Like, and it was like
Going
every 30 minutes
absolutely
for like
nuts.
6 hours. So it was just nuts.
What does hunger feel like for babies? Because they go absolutely insane
I don't
with a
know, man.
little, and it hits them in an instant, and they're like, "Whoa,
Yeah.
Starving.
Yeah.
Oppenheimer!"
It gives a new meaning to hangry, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's a
Totally.
whole new level of thing. Like I was just completely unprepared for it. I'd be like, oh, he's gonna get hungry and stuff like that. But no, you just wake up to like a shrieking banshee, and you're just like,
100%.
oh, what is happening? So,
And then their sleep right after that. Like, yeah, poop, sleep, done.
yep, yep.
Yeah.
It's a vicious cycle. It
Oh
never seems
yeah.
to end either. So
It's so cool. Like I said, my son's gonna be 3 in June, and I every time I talk to Aaron, I always go back to like kind of PTSD. Like you forget some of those times where the cluster feedings and like all the things that like the midnight changes and the 2 a.m. changes, and you forget
yeah.
about some of that stuff as the child gets older because you're focused on other things as the development goes. So as I tell Aaron all the time, it gets better, but then it also gets worse. So
It just changes.
It's just always changing.
Changes.
That's what everybody's telling me. It's just like they're always like as soon as you get used to in a rhythm with one aspect of it, it's going to change to something completely new, and then you
Oh
have to
yeah.
adapt to that. So
Yeah.
it's just I don't know. We're just constantly on our toes trying to figure things out.
They keep you young. The kids keep you young. It's like I'll be
They
41
definitely age
next
you
week.
daily.
They age you, but they keep you young. Like as far as telling my brother today, like so I'll be 41 on May 1st, so next Wednesday. And I was telling my brother today, I was like, he makes me do things I shouldn't be doing at 41, but it also is yesterday I was playing hide and go seek, like hiding on the top of the couch. Like I probably shouldn't be up here, but he's enjoying this, and I'm probably gonna fall and hurt myself. And of course, and after this, we're actually going to the trampoline park.
Oh wow.
Or so he can get tired out. And I know for sure my quads and calves are gonna be killing me by tomorrow.
Yeah,
So
take it slow. Take it slow on those first
no,
couple
we're
jumps.
jumping all in. I need him tired. Like my wife,
Yeah.
my wife's out of town until tomorrow, so I need him exhausted
No,
by
he's
yeah.
fine. I'm talking about you. You
Oh
take it
yeah,
easy.
You got to get a electric scooter, and just these things to make it so that you can get around. But he's got to like run alongside you.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm already trying to like tire him out all the time. We got one of those little Fisher Price play things, where he's touching all the buttons and the things are hanging above him, so he's reaching for things and um, just getting up from the floor, after sitting for like 30, 45 minutes, I was like, oh my
Yeah.
God. I even told him, like when I was lifting him up, I was like, oh, daddy misses being young, just being able to move
To-
pain free.
Yeah, it's definitely the old gets us all, unless you're LeBron or Tom Brady. The old gets everybody else.
Yeah, but going back to your question, Aaron, about the living arrangements, it's I think once you have a child, you realize that there's just like I have so much respect for like single parents now because
Yeah, it increases immediately. You're like, how does one person do this?
I don't know. I feel like it would be impossible. Like it would just be impossible because there are times when um me and my girlfriend are just trying to survive and we're both working it, consistently. And then
Hmm.
so we moved into my mom's house, just because for many reasons, financial reasons, like the pandemic just absolutely destroyed my life. Probably you gentlemen know what I'm talking about, but it was
100%.
It was
Yeah.
just a disaster.
A
So,
world-altering event
I
in
mean,
every way.
my career hasn't recovered yet. So, or we're hoping to be on the upswing here soon, but it's just been ridiculous. But anyway, so my mom helping us out with the baby has just been um such a godsend. Like it's so helpful because she's watching him right now while I'm doing this. You know what I mean? So, and if she wasn't here, I wouldn't be able to do that. And she'll do things like she'll go pick up food for us, just simple things, cook a meal for us, like while we're exhausted. Like, I mean, that first 6 weeks, I can barely even remember right after he was born.
Right.
And I don't
You're
think I
so
would have been able to
tired. It's
do it.
just such a blur. Yeah,
Yeah.
the way it goes by. And it's a similar thing. Like we moved in because my fiance is from LA. So we
Okay.
moved into her parents' home, which is a nice size house. And we were just in that apartment, like 2-bedroom apartment. And it was nice and cozy. We were making it work, but it was just like, oh, she's gonna need more things. And we don't have space for more things also.
Yeah.
And then of course, you look at rent and you look at other things. Like we were on the 5th floor, and it's like it would be so much easier to be able to push the stroller out of the front door than having to go to the elevator, downstairs, around the corner to the car, and all these things just start adding up and make you reevaluate like how are you gonna live? And it also becomes less before when you're single or just the two of you, you're like, well, how do we want to live? We want to live cosmopolitan in a city, out in the country. You saw all these choices. But then when you have a kid, depending on who you are, but the choices feel like they narrow. It's like, oh, we have to be in one or two or three places.
You have to
It's
buy
only going to
good
work.
schools. Good
We can't
schools.
choose like what kind of people we want to be. We're parents now. Like, so what can we afford?
Right.
And what's going to give us like a little bit more space?
And it's so crazy you guys talk about, kind of the moving arrangement. So Aaron knows this, but Brad, I'll let you know. So I lived in LA, Orange County for like 10 years. Me and my wife moved here to San Diego in October of 2020. So October
Oh,
1st,
wow.
2020. So mid-pandemic. So
Right.
it was, and we're single, well, not young, but we have no kids. We're like, oh, we're about to move to San Diego. We're gonna have fun. We're gonna do this. So we moved on October 1st, 2020. Found out we were pregnant on October 11th, 2020.
Oh, wow. I didn't even realize that.
Yeah, literally 10 days later, like, oh well, that just screws up all the plans. We're like, oh, we're about to go out.
Yeah.
We got friends. Like, so it's so crazy. So we've been here since October 20 of 2020. So we're gonna be moving here this October. We're trying to decide if we want to move to the Bay where my wife's from with her family, or somewhere just a little less expensive, like out of state. And again, you just kind of look at, like Aaron had said, the options of like, okay, what are our must haves, and now it's like, okay, what are good schools around, like are there parks, like what's accessible to us, like you think of very different things versus like where the bars at, where's the social scene, like we don't care about that anymore, like what good parks are by us, what school is by us,
Yeah.
what's the price of gas. Like it's
Yes.
very different, your mindset for what your requirements are for moving. So it's very funny that you guys say that.
Well, that change to your mind happens so fast
Yeah.
because, like we're blessed where we are right now in the Central Valley of California because I grew up here. My girlfriend Dominique, she grew up here. We were both in LA when the pandemic hit, so we came back here. And her family is here and my family is here, and so we're just blessed. And we know all the things that you just talked about. We know about where the parks are. We know where all the good places to be are. We know, the good schools. We know everything. So there, we were talking for a little while about moving back to LA, like once everything recovered. But now we're kind of like, I don't think that's gonna happen. Like the one blessing from the pandemic is everything is digital now. You can work from home. We have an opportunity to raise our son without putting him in daycare, and save not only a lot of money, but also have that time with him where he's not, and no shade on any daycares, but I just don't want my son in a daycare. You know what I mean? Like I want full control over his environment and what he's going to be exposed to, especially nowadays, like
Yeah.
good example is like, we're not going to have screens on around him. It's going to be books. He can read whatever books he wants, whenever, but we're gonna really try and limit screen time, because I just see a lot of kids these days, you know, their heads are just buried like this, and I want him looking up like this, you know. So it's just
Totally.
those
Yeah, it's tough. We're trying to limit the screen time too, and I can definitely see where a will can break over over time, and you know, you use it for, but even then, still in moderation. I've talked to,
yeah,
to quite a few parents. It's like, okay, actually, where I go to get my hair cut, I go to this guy's house, and his son, I've seen his son grow for like the last 4 or 5 years, and he has him on a very strict time with like, he'll like, you can get on YouTube, you got another 20 minutes left today. Like, and I've noticed that, and it's like very key and important. And then, they spend a lot of time at the park and playing basketball. His son's a little hooper. And he'll be like, yo, you can't just sit there and watch even basketball highlights all day. He's like, screen time is done. He's like, that's it. So these things you end up learning about, like about yourself, how you can enforce a discipline that you may not have had to
yeah.
before.
That's a really good that's really well said, because yeah, I do know what you mean about the will kind of breaking down over time, you know. And I'm sure there's going to be instances where, like, you know, maybe on a road trip, all right, here, like, look at
Yeah,
this, you
just
know,
take
like,
the pad. Yeah.
yeah.
So I'm gonna chime in for that one because yeah, I was just saying. So you guys have 2 month and 3 months old babies. So when I get to like 1 and 2, like
For
it's gonna
sure.
be harder. It's gonna be a lot harder. I'm gonna tell you, like me and my wife are very much anti-screen, but there's also those times like we go on trips or we go
Yeah,
like we have work to do. Like there's times where they're gonna kind of break that, but the one thing with that is you have to be very cognizant of what they're watching on that screen too, because like even YouTube Kids, like that's all he watches, YouTube Kids. Like he watches like maybe 4 shows, but like sometimes the subject matter is still like inappropriate on YouTube Kids, which we thought that was pretty surprising because like
Yeah.
sometimes we talk about death and like talked about these different things. So screen time limited.
Yeah.
There's gonna be times where it spikes, and then you're gonna have to offset that with times where you shut off all the lights in the house.
that's good
But
advice, because I just think I don't know what I don't know yet. Like I
right.
was so completely naive about so many aspects of having a baby. You know, I was like, you know, we'll get through it. It'll be fine. And then you're just devastated with, you know, like
Truth,
lack of
reality.
sleep and
It's
exhaustion, and
like
just
the
like,
closest thing
oh,
I can think of for like a single person. It's like, okay, imagine you started like a new job, and the first day, the deadline is the next morning on the biggest project the
The biggest
company's
project
ever
ever.
done. They're like, okay,
yeah,
this is gonna set our whole future, our
yeah,
whole past, ties everything together. It's due by end of the day today. And you're like, I just started. I didn't even fill out my W-2. They're like, you got to finish this
right.
right now. And like that's how kind of how it hits you.
And
It's
then
going to
tomorrow it's a
impact
totally
your
different
entire
project.
future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tomorrow it's a
Your and
totally
like
different project, even more
every
important.
employee's future and our stock price and all the shareholders. This is a global phenomenon that you got to solve in 8 hours today. So you need to get on it. But with like moving, so everybody I know, I was telling you guys this, almost everybody I know that has had a kid in the last 10 years, or maybe anybody that's a peer of mine, even going back, within those first 5 or 6 years, has moved.
Mm,
And we kind of talked about some of the reasons why. But and a big one is space, and a big one is like looking for schools, but it also does challenge having a kid, your own sense of privacy.
Mhm.
So moving in here with the in-laws, and we're like three bedrooms, I think we got here. There's no like office room, It's like I'll do the podcast from outside. I'll go into like the dining area, and it's like, y'all don't be eavesdropping on my pods now. Let's we need some elbow room in
Like and
here. But
subscribe. Watch it when it gets released.
yeah, go rewatch it. Don't just be listening to get the goods for free. But your sense of like space and privacy like really get challenged, especially when you live um with somebody else, even if it's
yeah,
family.
yeah. And that's been a challenge. Although I want to give credit to my mom for just being wonderful about respecting boundaries. You know what I mean? Because it's hard to put boundaries in when you have a baby, and you just can't really function as your best self. You know what I mean? You guys understand what that is when
Yeah, oh, for
Yeah.
sure.
you're just completely exhausted and you're just like, listen, I just need a minute. I need just 5 minutes to
Yeah.
myself to watch Sports Center. You know, who even won the game tonight? Did the Lakers or the Nuggets win? I don't even know. I just want to find out for just 1 minute. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Um,
I'm sure there's a difference. And again, I'm not in that situation yet, but Bradley, you're at your home, and then Aaron, you're at your in-laws. So I'm sure there's a little bit of a difference in the kind of the flow of that as well. Because Bradley, you're in a space that I'm sure you're comfortable with, a little bit more comfortable with, and then Aaron, again, it's a little bit newer space. And like I said, if I was gonna be moving, it'd be with my in-laws as well. And I kind of brought this up to my wife, saying, I want to make sure that, as we talk about these different options, like I'm going to tell you what I would potentially feel like, because it would be a very different space. Like I would not feel like I'm at home. I wouldn't feel like even the conversations me and her had would be the same, because her mom's there or her family's there, and like, okay, well, if we get in a fight, it's about 10 people versus me. Like nobody's on my side in this fight. Like it's
right.
everybody, like it's all her family there. So that's also one of those things that, as you look at, the living arrangements, you have to think about some of
Bro,
those
that
things
is
about
actually
comfort.
huge, bro. Cause
Yeah.
like, not that we're over here getting in fights all the
Yeah,
time,
yeah, but
or
you would
or
want.
or that you would be, but it's definitely like you think about your approach to things. You
Hmm.
become like maybe more measured or more considered, because it's like now you don't want things to escalate because of the kid, for one. So that brings you down a couple notches. And then you don't want things to escalate because of the in-laws. That's another couple notches. And now you're in like a neighborhood and not an apartment. And it's like, okay, I don't know, I don't think anybody can hear, but I also don't want the neighbors being all involved in my
Yeah.
joint,
Yeah.
And the neighbors on your side anyway. They're on their side as well. Yeah. So, like
And some of the
neighbors,
neighbors aren't on
yeah,
either of
yeah.
our sides. So we both would
Exactly,
be up here
exactly.
like,
I finally understand why my dad used to golf for like 8 hours on Sunday. Like, I
So
always
we're
used
all
to be
gonna
like,
take
Dad, where
golfing.
you been? Where are you going? He's like, I'll be
Out.
back. You
Yeah,
know,
out.
like I get that now.
That's it.
But yeah, it's such a hard transition. Because I was a, single guy living in LA. Like I had my own apartment there and it was great. Like I was actually really enjoying life,
I
and
think
then
all
the
three of us were
pandemic,
in that same spot.
yeah,
yeah,
the
yeah, one way or
pandemic
another.
happened and then you just don't really have any options. Like I lost my job, I lost my apartment, I had to sell a bunch of my stuff. Like I was one of those people that kind of fell in between the cracks. So I didn't get unemployment for like 8 or 9 months. And then also my stimulus money that everybody was getting was like late. So I just had no income at all. And everything was shut down. And I was just sitting in my apartment by myself. And so I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna go visit, my family. And the visit ended up I held on to my apartment for like a year and just
Mhm.
hemorrhaged money. And then finally I was
Right.
like, I just can't I'm going into debt. And I actually did go into debt just trying to hold on to my apartment because at the time you had no idea what was going to happen.
Right. You
So
felt like it could open back up and
right. Then well, I kept
not.
telling you it was going to open up and then it just
Yeah.
didn't. But like the transition to living with, my family and then my girlfriend coming in and moving in here as well. It's really tough to navigate because you as I'm learning this and I'm nowhere near perfecting it in any way or I'm just learning, but you have to really kind of kill your ego, as a father.
That's the key right there.
100%.
Like,
You just
let's get
it's
into
not
that.
about you anymore. I had all that where it was just about me as a single man for a long time where I could be indulgent about
Right.
my wants and desires and like I could take chances with my career because like there was no repercussions. But now it's like I can't take chances, you know. I'm thinking about going back to school and getting something steady, and those kinds of things. So
Mhm.
yeah, I'm slowly learning that fact and it's been very difficult, but it's also kind of opens up a new kind of part of your soul where you're just like, "Oh, wow, okay, this is something different now."
No,
Yeah.
totally. Because I found that like there's a part that when you like talk about the things you're talking about, and we've went through similar things and similar in different ways, but a lot of loss and a lot of restructuring because of COVID. And some of these things would have happened just with the arrival of a kid, even without
Yeah.
a worldwide pandemic and without a writer's strike and an actor's strike that
Yeah.
followed it, you know. But I found that, the very like modern way is to be like, you you can't get down on yourself. You can't get depressed. But in a more nuanced way, I would say my brain and emotions have opened up in a way to look for multiple opportunities. Kind of the cliche of like, there's no problems, only solutions, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like, okay, yeah, if I listed things out in a certain way, it could be very depressing. But I don't feel that way now. I just feel like something can lead to something. Going back to school can lead to more stability, or
Mm-hmm.
moving in here can lead to more stability in another way, or a big savings. And because, like you said, it's not all about me now, that also feels fulfilling in a way that maybe doing more self-serving things felt fulfilling before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. That's a great point because it does feel fulfilling. There is a sense of fulfillment at the end of the day, when we're giving him bath time and then tummy time and then getting him ready and swaddling him and all that kind of stuff. And then it's finally time to sit and relax and then just kind of reflect on the day and realize, man, I didn't really take a moment for myself today, but that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel like I really accomplished what I'm supposed to do, and that's a nice
Yeah.
feeling. I feel like that's a very good feeling.
Yeah, and it's funny you guys brought that up. Two things, like the first one, they're talking about, the accomplishment and that feeling. Like I think for me, it was a blessing having a kid during COVID because I was always the type of FOMO. Like I was always out and about. Like I always felt like I was missing something
Mm,
if I wasn't out, doing something or hitting the club or whatever it was. And when COVID hit and stopped everything, that's when I got married. That's when I had a kid, and it's like I never felt like I needed to be out doing anything else. I always felt like this was the spot I needed to be at with my son, spending as much time with him as I can. And I was always told from the beginning that, from ages, 0 to 4, those are like the most absolutely critical times, especially for a dad to be there to spend those moments with your child so that you can establish those bonds. Because if you miss those times, it's harder you never get those back, but it's also harder to establish those really paternal bonds. And then also, Aaron, you had mentioned about saving, and I was doing some research in regards to like the income requirements in order to buy a house or to be kind of self-sufficient as a millennial adult. And of course, we all live in California, which is the most expensive state, but they said you need $194,000 of income in order to afford a medium house in California.
yeah.
And there's 22 states where you have to have over $100,000 that you make in income to afford just a basic house. And we all
Yeah.
know right now in California, a basic house is like a shack. Like you can't,
Right.
there's nothing. So we think about like what's the next best step for us. Like we're thinking about potentially moving to Arizona, Nevada because it stretches farther. And then we start to look at what are our options there, and healthcare, or not healthcare, childcare costs. It's $1,000 a month just across the board just to put them into daycare. And daycares are pretty much half day. Like it's half day of learning and then half day of just playing. Like if you can
Right.
have somebody at home, that you can save that cost as well. So there's a lot of things that go into like that next steps of what's best for myself and the family.
Yeah. And it's a profound consideration, right? Because
Mhm.
my cousin has two children, and he and his wife work full time, and they spend close to $4,000 a month on daycare and babysitting.
Yeah,
And
Yeah, it's
I
crazy.
was stunned when I heard that figure. I was like, well, it's a good thing that where I'm at because I don't want to spend that money, first of
yeah,
all. And
It's
then
crazy.
second of all, like I don't know. Obviously, they have to do what they have to do, but I just don't
Yeah.
know like,
That
if that's the right thing to
that's like
do for my
that's
son.
just that's just crazy in the sense that that's what it costs. And that,
hmm
it's a bigger discussion about how country treats parents and childcare and
It's
things.
a big discussion. We've been
Yeah.
having that discussion, my partner and I,
Yeah.
of like, what is happening?
Yeah.
Why is this
It's
the expectation?
it's awful, and the length of maternity, paternity leaves is ridiculous. If you're in that situation, you don't even get enough time. But we all have to make the best within the system that we have. and then one day maybe the voices of the people can be heard and the system will change. Because it is
Nah, that's
not.
not gonna happen.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. But because
We're
it is
gonna
not
be
conducive to somebody.
squashed. They're gonna cancel this podcast after this. We're talking too much about the government.
They're going to cancel parenting eventually. They're just going to raise, kids are going to be born in matrix pods and then raised in factories and get to work by the time they're 4 years old. As soon as you can walk, you can work.
So
As soon as
I
you have
literally
motor skills, you can put a sprocket in a sprinklet,
not a sprocket and sprinkler. This is the Jetsons.
That's what I'm saying.
But
It won't matter. That's the point of a sprocket. It doesn't matter what it is. It's just like an assembly line task,
This got real dystopian out of
I know,
nowhere.
right?
What
Like,
just
now I'm
happened?
Hey, when you start talking about money in 2024, you get like very Terminator 2,
Man, one of the best sequel movies of all time. Side note.
Yeah. Let's dovetail. James Cameron.
Off on a tangent now. This is my favorite part.
Sometimes tangents are great.
Yeah, I know, right? But no,
But
that,
yeah.
go
Go
ahead,
ahead, Tom. I was going to wrap it up, really.
Oh, I mean, yeah,
If you
that's
guys
fine.
got some-
I was gonna
if you
say,
guys got some points, yeah, let's hear your final points. And,
yeah, just I mean, again, it's just so crazy because, like I said, there is no, like, the way that things are going with technology and COVID's never going anywhere. Like, the whole world changed 2020, and I don't think parenting they're not gonna be able to keep up with the changes that are being made. Like, AI is taking over so much things. Like, the cost of living is going so high. Like, but parenting has stayed on this consistent level of, like, you
That's
have to
funny,
you
yeah.
have to feed, you have to, like, you need,
Yeah,
the
kids don't
women
have
need
different
time off. Yeah, exactly. So
different needs. It's the same kids from
Yeah.
0 BC,
and so, like, I was reading studies, like, of course, our generation is having less kids, and it was like, how's that going to impact, globalization in the next 20 years? Because, as opposed to the 2.5 kids that our parents were having, now we're having like 1 kid or sometimes less, and even later. So it's like, how is that going to impact us? But yeah, parenting is kind of getting left by the wayside, and child rearing, and it takes a village. A lot of these foundational things that we had back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s are all gone now. And it's going to be interesting to see how that impacts our kids and their kids as well.
Yeah, and man,
I got deep on you.
Yeah, well, no, I think it's all really well said, but I think going back to the basics, as you said, like, kids are always going to be the same. I think the challenges really now are going to be for the parents trying to navigate this new landscape that we have that seems to be changing like every day. And
well, it's totally crazy because, yeah, you have to learn all the parenting lessons from before, like we were talking about earlier on. Your sense of privacy, your ego, those are things all parents have had to deal with. And then there's a next level, which we even started talking about at the beginning, which social media or navigating, a constantly new job market, like what you were just alluding to, Brad.
Yeah, I mean, it is going to be tough to understand, I think, and to navigate that, because I feel like almost every day there's something that I see or I read where they're like, don't do this instead. And then somebody else, some guru or like some expert, is telling me the exact opposite. And I'm just like, you know what? I'm just really going to listen to my instincts here. I'm going to provide him with warmth and care, and just shower him with affection, challenge him as a father is supposed to do, and, instill some discipline and toughness, and then just try and make him into a good man. I think at the end of the day,
there you go.
My one goal for this child is I want him to be a good man, and to understand how difficult the world is, and, think about situations like peer pressure and, listening to your instincts and going with your gut and all those kind of things that people kind of scoff at, but are really big for men, I think. And I think men really have to get back to trusting themselves. And that's what I kind of want to instill in him, is a bedrock foundation of goodness and also faith in himself.
I love that.
That's what my goal is for him, and hopefully maybe I'll learn a thing or two along the way with him.
You need to come on the pod every week, bro. We got a new third chair on the podcast right there.
But
that was
100%,
beautiful,
yeah.
man. That was beautiful.
Thanks for joining us, Brad, and everybody like, subscribe, and follow.